Hi, Anti-Society! Welcome back to the Antisocial Planet. Today we're getting into some more Vinland Saga, and in the last episode we caught up with Canute, which is the first time that we've had really a direct story after the last episode of the first season. The first episode with Eanad, his family, definitely some of the stuff going on with that is related to what was going on at the end of season 1, but this is the first time that we've gotten a direct continuation of that, to the point where we had flashbacks to those final episodes. So I think that's really interesting. It makes me feel like maybe we are starting to shift a little bit more into some of the main plot points now that we've set up the environment that this second season is going to be starting with Eanad as a new character, lots of new characters at this farm where Thorfinn is currently working. We also had a time skip in the last episode, which I feel like is going to continue. I feel like in this episode, if I were to make a prediction, it would be that we are going to be catching up with Thorfinn after that time skip, because in the opener we do have, I think, him and Eanad are like older, so I'm assuming that that's where we're going to have that shift and then see where they are now after that time. But we had Canute being crowned as the king, so I'm assuming that is going to start to affect some of the other things going on in what is happening with Thorfinn and his journey, especially since he's starting to realize that he does in fact want to survive, and because of that he needs to have some kind of clear goal or motivation. He needs some kind of reason to continue to struggle the way that he has. So it'll be interesting to see where he's at now after that realization, and what I predict is going to be like a bit of a time gap between that to see how he's developed. So let's get into the episode. In 3, 2, 1, go. Ooh, starting with the opener. I do think that this opener is just super moody, which when I first got into the series I was like, oh, that doesn't really fit necessarily with my idea of what the series is going to be, because it is more like action oriented a lot of the time. But given what we've been doing so far at this part of the season, I'm assuming probably halfway through the season we'll get a different opener. It does feel fitting to have something that's a little more moody and doesn't have the same kind of like action heavy sound that we had in like season 1 openers. I also feel like it just fits with the more like artistic way that the story is being told in this season too. Like there's lots of great symbolism and like visual ways of showing the emotional turmoil of the characters, which is really cool. I really like it. As someone just who loves art and more abstract storytelling, I think that it's a really cool thing to do. And I think that having the sound design kind of fit with that. See, this part, I think this is after some kind of time skip. There are images there at the end. So I'm assuming that that's where this episode is gonna pick up. Maybe? I'm okay with being wrong. Ooh, I love that like full blue that we're opening with. We need a horse. Okay. Straightforward. We're on a mission, I guess. Ooh. The snake being there is interesting. Like both that we have a character named Snake and then also snakes, I think like Garden of Eden. Ooh, and then we have 2 birds. Perhaps our 2 main characters. Birds, freedom, flying away. It does seem like there's a time skip there a little bit. We're struggling though. Yeah, I'm like, I think you're gonna have to do a little bit more to get it out. I mean, I love the commitment. These are old trees. Like, you're gonna have to really want to, if you want to get all those roots out. Did we get there eventually? Ah, that's why we need a horse. It's supposed to be a challenge, right? I feel like they're not supposed to earn their freedom. Oh, okay, fair enough. Probably. I feel like no one's going to lend them something as valuable as a horse. Yeah, I'm like, horses are like a really important part of farm work, especially in this time period. And they're expensive. Like, upkeep of a horse is very expensive. So they don't have any reason to use such a valuable resource. The direct contrast of like, hey, we're just taking a horse after they've struggled to get one. It's true though, like they are seen, if not at the same as a horse, probably like less than a horse. Like a horse is probably more valuable in the eyes of these people than they are. I mean, I'm assuming they're gonna find a horse of some kind because the name of the episode, but find a horse of some kind? I don't know if he's unmotivated. I just feel like he's probably more realistic. I mean, Anna's plan is like, we'll just get a horse. And Thorfinn's like, okay, logistically though, how do we do that? Is it Snake? Oh no, it's the old man. I'm assuming Snake's gonna be important in this because we had the snake at the beginning of the episode. He's seen some things. A horse? Is he connected to Snake? We had Snake who was in someone's house before who refused to like give him like food or whatever. He was like, work for it. Is he connected that way? Or are we helping out? We're paying for being able to borrow the horse? I was gonna say, probably until you don't have any more rocks to pick up. So impatient. I think it's really interesting how Thorfinn is just like, okay, do the work. Like he just kind of accepted that he's going to have to struggle and pay for anything that's being given to him. Sometimes you just have faith in people. I don't know if that's what's gonna happen because generally in this series people aren't worth being trusted. I mean, again, horses are very valuable, and especially at this time that like if you're going to not be able to use the horse to do work around the farm, then in exchange they should be doing work to like help counter that, right? Like he went from like being grumpy about having to do the extra work, and then he's like, "What a wonderful person for letting us borrow this horse." Poor horsey working so hard. What does the horse get? Yay! Look at you go. Must be nice to actually see like progress. Ooh, his ear. Do we not think that far ahead? I mean, I guess Thorfinn didn't grow up on a farm. I was gonna say, I'm like, he surrounded by battlefields for most of his life. Oh, the fact that you can't see his eyes after he said that. True. We have someone who knows about farming. I was gonna say maybe it was a different name. Oh. So he's the father of who owns like Thorfinn's farm now? Yeah, no kidding. Of course it looks like rain. Yeah, you're gonna have to deal with that for a while. I guess it's probably very symbolic too for Thorfinn to like see that they are creating something that like they're literally growing things. They're creating life by like planting things. Yeah, I guess too, Thorfinn's used to being around like inventions that are like literally for destruction and war, and now he's seeing inventions that are for like creation and life and sustaining people. There's definitely more life to Thorfinn's eyes though, like the way that he's drawn. There's more like curiosity there too, where he's like, oh, asking questions. I want to know about these things and understand them. At the beginning of the season, he wouldn't have been asking the same questions because he wouldn't have cared. He'd be like, just do the work and move on. Okay, so it is connected to Snake. I mean, maybe if you gave them free will. Just saying, I'm going to continue to judge him for having slaves. I don't feel bad about that. He hangs out here. Maybe he's just comfortable and tired. You don't know his life. Oh, does he know there's food? The deadpan delivery of Thorfinn just being like, hi, hello. They enjoy each other's company, though. The judgment. So his weapons around. That makes me feel like he was a fighter at some point in his life. Do you need recruits, maybe? Like Thorfinn, who's proven that he's pretty good at this whole fighting thing? I feel like that's foreshadowing. Like there's gonna be attack on the farm at some point. Lies. You know. You could do the math. I believe he probably already has, like subconsciously. We have a different king now? You're gonna have to deal with Canute at some point. And he's already proven that he is not interested in like the wealth side of it. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, so many people chase like wealth just for the sake of like they feel like they should, or for like I don't know, some kind of number to attach to like their own wealth, right? Like their own worth. But really, you just need enough to like sustain yourself and to be happy. And you know, like you don't really need to like continually chase wealth and power, which is an interesting uh contrast with a lot of the other people in power that we've seen in the series, to then have this farmer be like, it's actually better to not have a bunch of wealth. True. I think they probably have more similar ideologies. Look at the fond smile. You'd almost forget that he tried to strangle him. It's just something I'm still like, ugh. Feel like that's symbolic. We've already set up that it's like, oh, with this many people, like 50 or 60 men, they could take over the farm. Too much wealth brings misfortune. They're only protected because they were dealing with the previous king, and we know that Canute is crowned now, or at least soon. I feel like we're setting up for the farm to get attacked. We had another time skip. Aw. You better say that we're friends. You're gonna hurt his feelings. Confirm it. Oh. Hey! I do kind of want them to be friends, despite the rocky start to their relationship. Lots of interesting dynamics in that one. And I think, again, predicting a lot of foreshadowing things are going to happen. I do feel like the farm is going to be attacked, especially since we know that it is in power now. I feel like we had another time shift there. So it was almost like we had two. We had a time shift at the beginning, and then we had another one where they actually got into the autumn season. So I feel like we've caught up with where the time skip was with Canute by the end of this episode. Set up a few things there. Of one, there's a new king, so you can't just send a bribe anymore. We know from the previous episode that Canute isn't interested in bribes and wealth. That's not what he's after. He feels this land is his. He is entitled to be king of it, to be ruler of it. That is what Canute is after, and not the wealth that the land can give him. We've set up that they don't have the forces if someone with 50 or 60 men were to show up. And we also had the more wealth brings more misfortune thing. So I feel like that's going to be something I'll come back to. And I feel like that might be one of the main plot points that happen, especially since that could bring Canute and Thorfinn back into each other's stories. So we'll see what happens with that. But I really like the dynamics of it, the contrasting of different personalities, of them meeting someone who is, if you work, you deserve to have some kind of compensation for that. Putting in effort means that you deserve to get something back, which isn't necessarily what happens when you have a system that relies on slave labor. That is inherently you not giving people back the value of their labor. Meeting someone who thinks differently and says, oh, if you put in this work, then you deserve to get the thing that you want. Very much like a trade barter system, as opposed to actually passing some kind of currency between each other and feeding them and treating them as people, because he's like, oh, you've worked today, so therefore you deserve the respect that comes with someone who has put in hard work, right? That's a very interesting shift in the way that they're being treated compared to other people. And I think that is going to set up some interesting things in terms of like how that character is going to go through the rest of the story, and the contrast between how he ran the farm versus his son who's running the farm now, and the greed or pride that comes with wealth and power. Also interesting to have Snake intertwined with that and how they get along fairly well, because I think that they do have similar ideologies, considering that Snake seems to be someone who isn't like a really hard worker or ambitious worker, but I think that they do have similar personalities in the way that they see the world, in that it is okay to just do enough, right? It is okay to just have enough to make you happy. And I think that's such a difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp, especially in this series where we deal with a lot of people who are trying to get power, trying to get wealth, trying to get notoriety, and have that driving, consuming ambition. And then you meet someone who is, I'm okay with doing just enough work and effort in something that I care about to be happy, to meet the bare minimum of what I need. Someone who even knows what their bare minimum is a very rare thing, even by today's standards. I feel like so many people are just striving for the next thing and to outdo whatever the past thing is that they did, and they aren't trying to see what they can do laterally, right? Trying new things, learning new things, being okay with having a quiet, average, just enough kind of existence is a certain gift in and of itself. And for a lot of people, that is enough for them. They don't need to do something super ambitious. So I just think it's interesting to introduce that idea in contrast to a lot of other people that we've met. And I think also in contrast to the people that Thorfinn is used to being around. I think part of the reason he didn't have any to motivate him or anything that he cared about is because he's so used to being around these people who are so ambitious about all of these huge things that they're just reaching as far as they can to get to them. And he doesn't know what it means to meet people who are just, I'm okay with a quiet life on a farm, doing just enough to get by, and be in that space is good enough, right? It doesn't have to be some grandiose idea of being king or going down, being a legendary name or having abundance of wealth. And I think that's a really interesting thing to introduce to his character, his perspective on the world, and seeing him ask so many questions and be so curious and engaging with so many new things in his life that, like I said, at the beginning of the season, he would not have cared about, right? He would have just done the work, put in the labor, moved on. He wouldn't have wanted to know, oh, what about plows or horses or what kind of crops do you grow? Those won't be questions that he would be asking. I think that's a really interesting thing to bring in, of he is curious about the world and he wants to understand it and engage with it in a way that he hasn't up to that point. And he's realizing how sheltered he may have been, even though he has been through some horrific things and he's been to lots of different places. He's interacted with lots of different kinds of people. He hasn't bothered to like actually ask questions and engage with any of those things because it wasn't pivotal to who he is or what he needed to do to reach his goal of defeating Askeladd, right? So I think that that's interesting. We also have, I think, a bit of a setup that they're going to need someone to join in with the fighting with Snake, and I think that'll probably be Thorfinn. I don't think Eonar, despite his little training stints that he's had, has it in him to be a soldier, at least not at this point. So we'll see where that goes. If he can, maybe Thorfinn can see a way of life that uses those skills of combat and fighting that he knows while also doing something productive and creating instead of destroying. We'll have to wait and see, but I think it's an interesting setup for some potential things down the line. I can see some foreshadowings. I hope you enjoyed watching that along with me. You can click this place to go to some previous actions, or you can subscribe to miss next time I post a Vinland Saga reaction. I will see you in the next video. Bye.